because I was faster than my last weight run.
Yeah.
Of course, going different directions this time. Ready?
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Jesse, Bunny Operator here. Today we're joined by our first female guest, and really cool person. I've had the chance to speak with her a few times, and actually a little bit before this to try to get to know her a little bit better. So Emily Chen, she's a competitive shooter, you know, an overall badass, if you will. She is a firearms instructor teaching in the Southern California. Is it, Emily? Yeah. But I'm sure she'll talk more about that when I turn over the microphone to her. So go ahead and start, Emily. Introduce yourself. Give the world a little bit more information on yourself.
Sure. So like you mentioned, my name is Emily, and I'm located in Southern California. I've been a firearms instructor for the last 4 to 5 years now. I have been competing in USPSA for about that time length as well. Prior to getting into handgun shooting and being able to teach handguns, I actually was competing in sporting clays. I was 18 years old when I started, and I was very lucky to be working with a couple gold medalists, Josh Lakatos and Kim Rohde, two who I was able to meet through the community. And I was trying to pursue that path towards the Olympics, but I realized how expensive it got, and just decided to stick to it recreationally and just kind of develop my skills then. I actually started shooting when I was 13 years old, and that's kind of where we bring this all together. I was 13 years old. My father taught me how to shoot handguns, but I didn't get the proper training that I was really looking for until much later. It was really simply he loaded the gun for me. We were at an indoor range. We fired the gun off there. It's kind of like, hey, here's a car. This is how you drive it. This is a gun. This is how you shoot it. So when I realized at a young age that I was getting very good at this particular set of skills, I decided I wanted to pursue it, because when you're at a young age and you do something that makes you feel confident, that's something that you start focusing on, right? It comes with that self-confidence building, especially when you're much younger. Fast forward into 21, bought my first handgun, decided that I was going to want to get a CCW permit. So I currently work for Artifacts Firearms Training, and I was actually starting off as a student. Mm-hmm. So applied my CCW with Orange County, went through the training with Artifacts Firearms Training, who they are located at Prado Olympic Shooting Park in Chino Hills. And when I realized that they offered so many more classes outside of just a CCW course, I said, hey, shut up and take my money. So I was out there every weekend learning as much as I could. And then a couple years later, I decided, like, hey, you know, I really love that there are perfectly competent instructors out there, and I'd like to be a part of that. So when I started looking into it, Ben and Daniel, who are the co-founders of Artifacts, reached out to me and said, hey, we realized that you'd be a great fit for our team. Would you like to be one of our instructors? And I absolutely took that chance, and I've been with them for that last 4 or 5 years now. And so aside from teaching, I was able to develop my skills by learning how to compete through USPSA. The way that I started with that was simply just showing up one day and just saying, hey, here's $40. What do I do? And I was very, very, very lucky to be squatted with people who were able to show me the ropes, because I came from nothing. I knew nothing about competitive shooting. And so that was kind of my journey. And I've been very fortunate to meet a lot of amazing people who have made positive impacts in my life in the shooting community. So I'm hoping that I can do the same for others.
Nice. Now, so I recently learned what squatting up meant just from talking with Mike Newman and such. Can you explain to the non-competitive world what that means?
Yeah. So in a competition setting, or I guess even recreationally speaking, mm-hmm. you are going to be set with a group of people that you'll be traveling with for each stage in a competition. Oh. So you'll be in a team, basically, with a bunch of other shooters, after you're done with one stage, your group will travel to the next stage to continue on with the competition. In a recreational aspect, you may just be squatting up with your friends. You may just be having fun with them out at the range, and it's just a group of you doing the same things together. So if you decide that you want to squat up with your friend, just call up a bunch of friends and say, hey, do you want to go shooting today? Let's go do it.
So when you're in a squad, are y'all competing with each other, or it's just a group that's passing through that stage?
It could differ. Sometimes you might be the only person in your division in that competition, meaning the category that you're shooting in. And you might not be competing with the rest of the people in your squad because everyone else is set in a different division. However, you may also be competing against someone else that's in your group as well.
Interesting.
But in general, it's such a fun environment that you don't really think too much about competing against somebody. There may be other people who feel that way, but for myself, I think of it as, if I find that there's a person in my group that I am technically competing against, it's more for fun. Everyone has this amazing atmosphere about them. They have such a positive attitude, and they're extremely encouraging. That's really most of the experiences that I've had. I wouldn't say I had too many negative aspects where people were really like, oh, I'm going to kick your butt today. It's really just like, hey, I can do better at this stage than you can. Oh, really? Is that true? And then it's really just friendly competition at the end of the day.
I see. No, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. So I'm not from the competition world. I mean, most of my firearms training was really more from, how to put this, like government oriented, I guess, which segued to my own personal training. So I never got into the competition circuit to understand, although I do know that a lot of people start off in the competition world, which segues them towards their firearms career or anything else outside of or relating to firearms. So that's awesome. Thank you for that insight. Well, I mean, you pretty much just covered over like how you got into firearms growing up, learning from your dad. Like I didn't, and I'm sure a lot of folks didn't get that experience too, being first, second generation Asian Americans. A lot of our parents didn't understand all that stuff, but go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, my father didn't really have formal training with firearms. He learned everything through the military when he was in Taiwan.
I see.
And he was a great shot, but he didn't know exactly how to explain in the very formal sense that we learned here about firearm safety rules. He just knew to keep the gun pointed in a safe direction and to keep your finger off the trigger, and how to manipulate a handgun. But he has very extent knowledge, like very limited amount of knowledge. It didn't really pass into rifles or any other platforms. It was just mostly revolvers.
Right.
But he taught me what he knew, and then I kind of built upon that. And now it's funny because even though we've never owned a firearm at home, when he was the one in control of the weapons and stuff, it came back full circle where now the teacher has become the student, and I'm the one that's kind of teaching him how to handle semi-automatic weapons, how to shoot rifles, and all these other techniques that he's never learned before.
And he's receptive to that positively?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
He was very much against having weapons at home, but he always loved learning how to do the tactical stuff, So in many ways, it's fun because he still has an interest in it, even if he doesn't want to personally own a firearm. But that's kind of where I come in, and it's like, hey, Dad, I'm a responsible gun owner. And if you decide that you want to learn how to shoot guns, maybe someday, and be more comfortable with owning one, I can be more than happy to help you with that.
Right. So it's always amazing how things come full circle once we get a little bit older. I mean, to expand on that too, as far as your history itself, your upbringing, we already kind of touched on it with your dad being from Taiwan and such. Like, what about your background, your family's background here in America? Rather?
Oh, okay, yeah. So actually, I'm first generation in America. Okay. Yep. I was technically born in Monterey Park, so very, very big Asian community, right? And most of my family is still in Taiwan, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I maybe have a couple cousins here, but I don't really have many people in my family that live in America.
I see. So growing up for you in that area, it's a very largely Asian populator. So did you ever experience any any identity crises or hurdles growing up itself, especially coming to what we understand as now is our Constitution in America itself?
So in general, I've definitely grown up with the culture clash. Behind closed doors at home, everything was traditionally Taiwanese. I spoke Mandarin at home. Every once in a while, I'll speak English so that my father and I can speak with each other, and he can kind of improve his English as well. The identity crisis really comes down to the American way or the Taiwanese way. And of course, when you're a teenager, you don't really have a concept for how you should live your life, because you have technically two lifestyles. You have the one that's at home, and then you have one at school. And then you see how people at school behave, and it's extremely different than how it is at home. And so you're like, I don't really know what to do. I don't know who I am. I just know things that I like and I don't like. And that may cause a rift in your relationship with your family. And it definitely has with me. You know, I was not very feminine. I grew up as a tomboy. And so my father isn't very used to that sort of thing. So he didn't really quite know how to handle me. My mother was also the same way, where she actually asked me, why don't you challenge yourself as a woman? Why do you continuously challenge men in their lifestyle or their territory per se? And I never even saw it that way. It was never I want to do what boys do. It was just, I so happen to like things that generally guys like. And so I couldn't really explain to my family that, you know, I wasn't interested in being a princess or interested in dolls. I mean, I grew up very athletic. I was always involved in sports. And that's kind of why I geared towards firearms, because aside from the competition shooting, it gave me a sense of discipline. It gave me something to really focus on and to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely that culture clash, especially you and I being first generation born. You know, we definitely have that. We try to hold the family values or the cultural values, but at the same time, we're trying to find our own identities in America. And we see our friends and peers, they get to do these XYZ things, or the parents treat them a certain way or give them certain things. But you know, we didn't really quite achieve that. And especially your situation too, the cultural differences between gender roles. You know, like you mentioned, it's definitely certainly difficult. I've seen that occur in my family too. Like, I have younger sisters and such, but I've also seen progressively my parents change their parental guidelines as each child was born. You know, like my youngest sibling probably has the easiest out of all of us. You know, I mean, us older ones probably had it a lot more strict. But now my parents are super Americanized now, and you know, I probably hate to say, but the kid's probably a little bit more spoiled right now. But we'll see. You know, his generation is pretty much mostly like that, but we'll see from there. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story on there. I mean, were there any takeaways from you that, understanding what you know now, would you think anything you would have done differently back then?
I don't think I would have done anything differently back then. I think if I were as wise as I am now, right, because we kind of learn through life experiences, I probably could have been more patient with my parents, specifically my father, because I understand now as an adult that, at least with my parents, you know, they did the best they could with what they knew. They came from a different country with a different culture, a different upbringing. They're dealing with a child who's growing up completely separate from what they knew. And so I'm sure it was extremely difficult for them to bring up a child in a completely different culture, because they're trying to set you up for success. Ultimately, sometimes they don't know how. So now that I'm older and wiser, I kind of look back and think, like, if I could have been a little bit more patient and understanding of my parents' situation, I probably would have had a better relationship, I would say. But as far as my behavior in, you know, being feminine, a little bit more feminine or anything like that, I wouldn't have changed anything. In fact, you know, I was a ballroom dancer. I was a competitive ballroom dancer when I was 13. And that was a huge passion of mine, even more so than with guns. And I still feel that way today. I gave up that pursuit for guns, actually. Yeah. So everybody always thinks like, oh my gosh, you used to dance. And it's like, yeah, I did. And I still miss it every day. But I found so much more benefit to learning not only how to shoot, but now I'm teaching people how to shoot, because it comes down to self-defense. You know, it's a skill that can really keep you alive, right? That's what's really most important in the bare bones of this world, especially for today. I still miss being a ballroom dancer. I really wanted to teach and compete and go all the way, but I realized that would have been a huge struggle later in life, and I would rather have a practical skill that I can depend on.
Absolutely. I don't think anybody's ever going to fault your decision for that, you know. Do you ever find yourself, I guess, like going back to your classical training in ballroom dancing and applying it towards your firearms, either your own usage or your teaching?
Yeah, I definitely do. A lot of people don't even realize it because I don't talk about it very often. But when it comes down to biomechanics, oh my gosh, that's where the connection is made. And another thing, and this is something that people can relate to on any different level, it's that you can know what to do, but it's about making your body do it.
Right.
So for instance, I was actually teaching a student recently how to start learning to move and shoot. And so she was struggling with being able to walk and even hold the gun at the same time, because it's such an alien concept. Usually we're shooting statically, and now she's like, oh my gosh, I have a gun in my hand and I'm moving. What do I do? So I try to use the analogy of walking while drinking a cup of coffee, right? You understand that this cup of coffee is really hot, and you're trying to be aware of not spilling it on yourself or spilling it on anyone else. But your body mechanics are very natural. You're just walking. You're just being aware of your situation. And then you're also trying to keep it in a position where you're not going to harm anyone or yourself. So it's a simple concept. You don't really have to overthink it. So that's kind of what I do when it comes to the connection of like ballroom dancing and shooting. Learning how to dance in a specific direction, learning how to shoot in a specific direction. Your hips are aligned with your torso or not. You know, where are you going? What are you doing while you're trying to go somewhere? And then all the necessary steps that kind of connect everything together. Yeah,
right on. No, that's pretty much exactly my philosophies when it comes to biomechanics and shooting too. You know, you're absolutely correct that the moment we put anything that's a foreign input or something that's new into somebody's brain, all of a sudden their body goes haywire, because now they're overthinking everything. Yeah. All of a sudden they forget how to walk, just like you said, right?
Yeah, everyone is perfectly capable.
Correct.
Right? I mean, I'll even throw in handicap people. If you want to learn how to do it with a crutch, or if you want to do it in a wheelchair, you will do it. You will find a way to do it, because it's very possible. The only thing that people tend to do is overthink it. Like you just said, you know, you go haywire when you start inputting something that's completely alien to you, when really you've been doing it your whole life. And now it's just, you're holding something different, and that's it.
That's correct. Yeah. So, okay. So it sounds like that you're my type of instructor, and I like that. All right, let's see. So we basically covered most of how you got to the firearms industry. You start off essentially in the competition circle, where you're attempting to go towards the Olympic side, then transitioning back over to the pistols. Are you doing long gun work at all as well, or just the pistol side?
I do mostly pistol side. I have taught rifles, not too much. I think because most people tend to drift towards pistols, not too much rifle. I wanted to compete into 3-gun at some point. I just haven't been able to purchase the proper gear. But I have a rifle. I have multiple shotguns, and I have multiple pistols. Even though people see all three as completely different objects, and in their own respect, they are, the techniques behind everything is practically the same. It's just a little bit offset. So if we compare that to driving vehicles, right? You have cars that are automatic, and then you have cars that you have to drive stick with, manual. So if you understand how each vehicle works, then all you have to do is, when you're handling a single firearm, know how to be familiar with that platform, use it for what its purpose is, then when you're ready to shift over to another platform, just remember how it's going to function. How do you have to properly and safely handle that specific platform? I think a lot of people tend to overwhelm themselves by seeing all three, and they're like, oh my gosh, okay, I have to remember all this stuff. But if you allow your brain to think one thing at a time, which really that's the capability of it, it's allowing yourself to think about one thing at a time, you can actually flow through each of them very easily, right? We actually complicate things more so than we need to. When we think about how we were driving from the very start, you get into a vehicle as someone who's never even had a permit, right? You don't have a driver's license yet, you're just starting out. You're overwhelmed with the idea of handling this vehicle. There's a bunch of knobs, there's the wheel, there's all these different factors that you have to consider to safely drive that vehicle. But when you really sit in the chair and you eyeball everything and you go in your head like, okay, I know what this function is for. I know that if I go into neutral, I have to keep my foot on the pedal, because if I don't, the car is going to start moving. If I want it to completely stop, I have to put it into park, right? You understand every aspect of the vehicle in order to operate it safely. And it's the same thing with guns, right? Everything has a purpose. And when you sit down and you really go through everything and you fully understand it, then you're setting yourself up for success. So it's not impossible. You just have to be patient and you have to understand what each function is for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Conceptualize it. Conceptualize the individual item and then walk yourself through it, right? Because you're absolutely correct. People get nervous. And that's when you start to see people fumbling reloads or not hitting the correct control to either drop the slide or to drop the magazine, whichever it is. And we see people struggle with the simplest things. It's simply because they're overthinking or they're forgetting to breathe. That's the other thing. They're just holding their breath and tensing up. No, that's awesome. Awesome. Sounds like our philosophies are very, very similar. So I know we had conversations prior to the interview about your where you're headed and your future goals and whatnot. Is there anything that's coming up or down the line in your pipeline?
Yeah, so very soon, no confirmation date yet. Very soon I'll be moving to Okinawa. I'm not exactly excited. I am excited in the sense that it's like a new chapter in my life, but I'm very sad that I have to kind of at least temporarily give up my career because there's no guns allowed in Japan. So I can't even bring my babies over with me. I'm going to have to leave them behind with a couple friends. But I'm hoping to take up airsoft. I know Japan has a huge airsoft community, and I was actually very lucky to have a student recently that flew in from Japan. So he was able to direct me towards an airsoft community that I can reach out to, or at least a place where I can buy airsoft material so that I can dry fire at home. So at that point, I'd be able to maintain my skills. And that's pretty much it, really. I'm moving to Okinawa this summer with my husband because he's in the military and he's going to be changing duty stations permanently for the next 3 or 4 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's going to be a little while before I get to come back to the States. When we come back, I honestly have no idea where we're going to be at, whether it's on the West Coast or East Coast. So I'm just trying to take it one day at a time and just enjoy this new adventure I'm about to embark.
Well, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun. I mean, your channel is not your account, your IG is relatively large. Let me see. How many followers do you have now? I'm sure you're going to have no problems with finding people that you can have fun with out there.
I appreciate that.
Emily, you are at 7,642 followers as of this timestamp here. That's quite a large following, much more than mine. You know, that's quite a large following for just a shooter, for the firearms industry in general. Just because we're kind of cut off from the rest of the world. Over, I guess the firearms industry is technically considered as a niche industry in the rest of the social media world, right? Because we're talking about, we have people who literally sit there and film themselves eating, and they have like 100,000 plus followers. When this is more of a technical, practical aspect of it, but there's not that much people that. Yeah,
maybe I've been doing this thing the wrong way this whole time. I should be like stuffing my face and do ASMR?
Yeah, that's what you're gonna do when you get to Japan. Do airsofting, eating, ASMR at the same time. That's what you're gonna do. channel's going to blow up from there.
Maybe from then I'll actually get like 10,000 or something.
There it goes. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, like I said, I'm sure you're going to have lots of fun out there. We'll see your adventures. For you folks who aren't following Emily, I'll go ahead and link her Instagram here. You can go ahead and follow that. It's aims to misbehave, I think it was.
Yeah, it's aimed to misbehave.
Aimed to misbehave.
Yeah.
Correct.
There we go.
So and I'll link it here below, and then y'all can go follow her and her adventures. So as of now, I mean, your competition shooting, are you sponsored by chance?
Yeah, I am. I'm sponsored by Tiga Tactics, which is a martial arts company, actually, and I just want to speak briefly on them. They're really awesome. I'm very selective about who I train with martial art because, like vetting our instructors with firearm shooting, I'm literally depending my life on these sets of skills. And so for years, I've been seeking out the right instructors, and I finally found them through Tiga Tactics that are run by Patrick Wong and Conrad Wee. And they are two amazingly skilled instructors, both of which have multiple black belts, by the way, for all different types of arts. Martial arts, it sounds funny because they prefer the term combatives. Martial arts, sometimes there are certain styles that are more flashy and not necessarily directed towards self-defense. So Tiga Tactics is a company that's more towards combatives, and their sets of skills that they teach are based on statistics, which they've reviewed for thousands and thousands of hours. Like, for instance, they have programs online where, you learn how to defend yourself against stabbings, against blunt force objects, or even bare knuckle fighting. And so everything that they teach is based on things that they've watched as far as how your antagonist is going to attack you. How are you most likely going to be attacked in these specific ways, and how can you defend yourself against them? And so I was extremely excited to not only be one of their ambassadors, but to consistently train with them. And I'm not going to dwell too deep into it, but I was able to confirm that these techniques have worked. So that's extremely gratifying on my part. Yep. Outside of Tiga Tactics, I'm also sponsored by Taran Tactical.
Oh, nice.
And so, yeah, very, very, very lucky to learn a lot from them. And all my Glocks have been modified by Taran Tactical. I've been very fortunate to be able to shoot with them as well. And it's been great to meet the amount of people that I have through them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's quite the pedigree you have going on there.
Also, one more, by the way.
Yeah.
Huge shout out to Grizzly Ears. These ear pro, which I should have brought them over and shown you, but this is them right here. There's a little logo. Grizzly Ears are a electronic earbud that are not only wireless, but also Bluetooth compatible. So you can pick up phone calls while you're driving or listening to music. And I love them because they last me through all my matches. I've actually been using them for the last 2 years. And, average USPSA match can be anywhere between 3 to 6 hours, just depending on how popular that match is. And I always had this fear that my batteries were going to run out. But they come with a charging case, and if you charge it properly, it will last you between 4 to 6 hours.
Nice. Oh, these are what, inner ears, or? Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Oh, I'll have to look them up. Send me the details. I'll take a look.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
At some point too, over the ears, I mean, we can add on stuff, but they just get uncomfortable after a while.
Yeah, that's the thing is that Grizzly Ears have never had the issue, at least with me, where I felt uncomfortable because they don't have just one size fits all with the earbuds. They'll come with extra small to, I think, large or extra large earbuds so that you can interchange them to better fit your ear canal. And a lot of people tend to complain like, oh, it just feels really hard or really difficult to put into your ear. Never had that issue. When it comes to noise canceling, it's 85 decibels or up. So they're actually quite sensitive. And so being at an indoor range, when I teach down here in Oceanside at Iron Sights, I'm there for like 6 hours in a day. And I need comfort, right? A lot of people tend to use those earmuffs that press into your glasses. I hate those.
Yeah.
You know, I used to own an electronic pair and I wasn't comfortable with them, but wearing these Grizzly Ears, it's like I don't even have a pair on me. I don't even feel like I have earbuds in because I could hear so clearly when I'm having a conversation with someone either downrange or off range. So yeah, I absolutely love their gear.
Yeah, I know that's definitely a perk, especially so you don't have to deal with the temple hotspots from over the ear plus your glasses. You know, for those folks that aren't really are newer to the shooting, or equipment is fast, but there's so many variations. Some work really well, some don't work at all. You know, so they're not created equal. You really have to find what works for you. Especially my fellow Asian folks out there. We have what's known as Asian fit, like Asian fit glasses. You can't just get like a pair of Oakley SIs and put them on because you notice they won't even fit. They'll rest on your cheek instead. So you really have to get something that works for your face. And even within the Asian fit guidelines, there's still some folks that just don't fit those either. They have to get a custom pair made. But, you know, feel free to reach out to me or to Emily's channel. I'm sure that we can recommend you somewhere or point you in the right direction for equipment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's sometimes it's really hard, especially when you don't have guidance. Like actually part of the reason for this channel is to kind of help guide the folks that are just now going through it. Right. I really wish I had this type of information or folks out there that were trying to give away good information. Other than, well, a lot of the channels now, all they do is do like gear reviews, but they don't actually talk about the basic concepts of how they even came to those determinations for that gear, right? Or even the concept of why you should get over the ears or inside the ears for what situation.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's certainly hard. I think I'm sure that you're in my situation where we probably spent thousands of dollars on gear that we can't even use anymore.
Holsters are another.
Oh yeah.
Thing to talk about. I mean, when it comes to gear, you know, everyone loves making a recommendation, but what we have to remember is that any recommendation is based on personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
So what may work for me may not work for you, and that goes down to what you mentioned earlier: is find what fits best for you. And so with holsters, you know, I'm sure that's like the first thing that we stack money on is all these different holsters, because unfortunately you won't know what you like until you get it. And
Mm-hmm.
there's no return policy with any of that stuff. But it's also cool because when you own something that you don't want anymore and you know somebody needs gear and it just so happens that you guys own the same gun,
Mm-hmm.
like let them try it. And if they love it, you can either sell it to them or give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. Especially custom fit pistols, right? And you're in the competition circuit, so a lot of your stuff is either molded directly for that particular type of activity for that firearm. So yeah, certainly. And then concealed carry, that's a whole different animal too. You know?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I have multiple holsters when it comes to concealed carry. And so the thing is that with women specifically, our clothes are a lot more form-fitting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to try and find a holster that's at least a little bit slimmed down compared to most. But what I also realized is that it doesn't necessarily rely on the gun so much. Not the holster so much as it also depends on the gun that you're going to be carrying. Unfortunately for me, even though people think, oh, you're really slim and so you'll be able to conceal things better, that's actually not the case.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to put on a holster right now and put a gun on it, I have to find a shirt that will really conceal it because it looks like I'm pregnant with Legos. That's literally what I look like.
Mm-hmm.
So aside from talking about, you know, trying to find holsters, you have to make sure that if you're concealed carrying that you really do keep it concealed, because that's the whole point. So whatever gear you end up getting, set it up on your person with the clothes that you want to wear. And if you find out that there are deficiencies or flaws to it, ask yourself what you can do to fix them. And if you can't, start researching other types of gear that might fit better for you, your situation.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So the female market for equipment, holsters, and really female oriented equipment has only really bloomed in the last decade, probably even less than that or so. And even then, there's still that ramp up phase where it's just equipment. Oh yeah, okay, this is for ladies, but it's not thought out very well.
It's not practical.
Exactly. So we're talking about like they're usually corsets or like what is it, thigh carry, and I get it. There's a time and place for that stuff. You remember the whole flashbang bra holster thing, but they usually throw in, or they're usually made for guns that aren't even really practical for a lot of use anyways, right? They kind of add on to the stereotype, because you see that a lot of these holsters, when they first came out, I'm looking at the models they offered, and they're usually like snub-nosed Ladysmiths and stuff, and that's not ideal for everybody. Not everybody can use a small snubby. And even then too, as some of the holsters I've seen, I understand that there's a limitation based on attire, but they are counter to the knowledge that we already know from like specialized carry positions like appendix, right? Some of these holsters don't have the wing to help you tuck in the gun. They don't have any type of system to help hide the high point of the gun itself, and they're just simply, here's a soft belly band where the trigger can get actuated. There's no actual trigger guard itself, and
that's my biggest problem, is that most of the women's concealed carry methods, when we were talking about corsets, we were talking about some kind of, I don't know, it was like a bra or whatever it was that you were mentioning, leggings even. My biggest issue is that there's no hard surface to block the trigger guard and to prevent anything from depressing the trigger.
Right.
I mean, why would you want to conceal with leggings if you know for a fact that you can press right through the material and the gun will go off? Right. And wherever you're placing it, whether it's on your thigh or, if girls want to do it here, that's not my personal preference, especially since I got nothing going on there. You're looking at vital areas that literally, when you're bleeding out, will kill you in seconds, or you'll die in seconds. So you got your femoral artery and then everything else in your vital organs around this area. So those are two places that might be very unsafe to carry. So make sure that when you're looking for a holster in general, however it is you want to place it, wherever you want to place it, make sure that the trigger guard is guarded and completely sealed off with a hard surface. So a Kydex holster works best. I would not recommend leather, simply because it wears down over time, and leather will soak up all your germs and sweat and nastiness if you're carrying through a full day. And I don't think anybody really wants that. Right.
And leather also tends to be pretty thick too, especially if it's good quality leather. They're pretty bulky for what they are. And they do take time to work in also. So it sounds like you're in the same mindset as me, where we absolutely do carry one in the chamber, hence the need to cover the trigger guard. It sounds like some of these companies, what they do is they advocate for no chamber, unloaded chamber carry, thinking that people are going to have time to draw, pop out from the bra or whatever area it is, and which is already a non-convenient position to draw from, because they're usually a lot in non-conventional positions where the guns are, right? For at least the examples we've seen out there, then still have time to rack while whatever is going on is coming after you that caused you to draw to begin with. And maybe that's something that has to get thoroughly looked at from persons with a lot more experience and background, just like yourself or any of your other peers that really think about this.
Yeah, I think part of the issue, because obviously I have no idea how these companies think, and I don't like to make assumptions. Right. But it's very possible that they're really more focused on how can this person better conceal it, rather than how are they going to handle it when it's concealed. Right. And so, whatever discussions that they're having behind closed doors, I'm sure that they're starting to slowly improve, because I'm starting to notice that the hard-sided holster concept with females' clothing is starting to be a trend. I can't really name any companies at the top of my head that are very geared towards women, because I don't really look at that too often, but I just like the idea that they're starting to come out with hard-sided holsters along with whatever clothing they're advertising.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the biggest hurdle, is the ever-changing fashion trends that occur with attire in general. I guess right now there are some of the gals that just wear baggy clothes because it's part of it. Was it the 90s is circling back around? So I guess that may be a little bit easier. I did see that some of my followers, some of my female followers, they sent me that they're using the Filster Enigma, and that seems to work for them. But you still have the issue of if the gun is not as concealable, you can't wear as tight of clothing anyway. Still, and that's still a factor. And I think it's just going to have to be a trade off that everyone's going to have to make a decision on themselves. I mean, for themselves, it's if you want to wear a certain type of attire, then you're limited, extremely limited to what you can carry.
Yeah, and that doesn't just, limit women, it limits men as well, because you have very specific situations where you may not be able to carry on your person. And a lot of times when people think concealed carry, they think about carrying on the person, but they should also be learning how to carry off body, because in the event, which we're talking about, where you can't carry on your person, learn to carry out of a bag. Right, whether it's a suitcase, briefcase, or a backpack or a purse, a man purse. I have students that I've trained who will literally come down range with all different types of outfits and different bags that they think they're going to be using, and they want to be prepared for all those situations. And that's smart, right? Dry firing at home, making sure that if you're going to pull out your backpack and use that to carry and conceal, the zippers aren't snagging. Right. That's the most important part, is how are you going to efficiently draw your weapon in the event that you have to under duress? Because if you don't practice it while you're downrange, or if you're dry firing it at home, you're going to run into a lot of trouble when an incident arises. So you want to eliminate all those before something happens. Right.
It's that the tombstone courage, the false security that you gain just because you have a gun. And that's something that has to be taught out, or at least explain the realism behind it for newer shooters. Because you're not always going to be able to grab your gun super easily. And sometimes, like you said, it's depending on the situation. Like when I wear a suit, I can't carry on body. Technically, I can't carry my normal position on body, right? I normally carry appendix, and so I have to go like behind the back. But even then, my suits tend to be a little bit more form fitted. Granted, I can't fit them now, but it has to be behind the back, which is not ideal for me.
And so you're realizing biomechanically, drawing from behind your hip is not ideal, because your elbow is in such an awkward position. Plus, when you're wearing your suit jacket, that limits your range of motion.
Correct.
If you were to draw from the hip and you can still conceal it, that's great, but you should still practice it in those clothings, because you just don't know what issues you might run into.
Right. Absolutely. It's and a lot of instructors advocate for this too. It's like, whatever you're wearing for that day, try to draw. Right. I think Eddie was doing that for a little bit, and he's been posting it, but he's like me right now. We haven't had time to do anything and other than waste away at home. As I work from home right now. And so I pretty much look like I'm 6 months pregnant all the time. So whether I carry a smaller gun or I carry my 19 or whatever it was. So, it's going to help. So plaid seems to help hide the lines a little bit. It's kind of nature, but yeah, you're right though. I mean, I've seen even the male oriented equipment, then the holsters that come out are very generic, or they're not specialized towards any side of carry. And you see that all over Amazon. They're usually like the cheapest $20-$30 holsters, but they don't work well at all. They're just literally just there just so you can buy it. And I think that's bad. It's bad. I get it, capitalism, but it's still bad because it preys on the newer gun owner.
Yeah, I mean, I think a cheap holster to start off with to practice is fine, but when you are seriously considering carrying concealed, you have to ask yourself what's the safest type of holster and whether or not you can rely on it, in the sense that if you're going to draw your weapon, is that holster going to come off your belt? Is the belt clip going to snag properly like it should? And so when I teach my CCW students, because I'm a training provider for Orange County CCW.
Oh, nice. Nice.
I make sure to let them know that if you're buying a new holster specifically for concealed carry, make sure that you have 2 belt clips on that holster. In the event that one of them fails to snag on your belt, then the other most likely will, because 2 is 1, 1 is none.
Right. Yeah. Right. Redundancy for Murphy's Law. That's kind of the way it works. I mean, short of carrying 5 different guns around here. So actually on the belt factor too, that's something that's not really discussed by a lot of the industry also. But, a good belt, it makes a huge difference on the ability to conceal properly, and as well as load bearing too, because, we are carrying extra weight that's not natural to our body. So it does affect your hip one way or another, or your back. Do you normally use a belt when you carry?
Yeah, I mean, I have to because it's not only going to drop my pants, but I'm probably not going to be able to use the holster.
Right.
So I'm a very big person when it comes to minimizing the amount of gear that I have. And so if I find a good belt, which I have, which is 5'11", something that's about 1.5 inches is an average width of a belt that you would want when it comes to using it with your holster. Anything smaller than that or less than that is not a bad idea, but I wouldn't suggest getting anything that you would normally get at a fashion store because they are not going to last very long. Right. I would say anything from 5'11" is great. They have a lot of options. Even their leather belts are designed for being able to use your gear with. So 5'11", there are definitely a lot of other companies out there that have come up with some new ideas. But what you also want to consider is the belt buckle, right? Because that adds on to making you look a little bit more pregnant when you are carrying concealed. Something that I ran into is that I'll have a belt buckle on top of my holster. And so I've got this weird looking U shape in front of me. And so a good way to minimize your belt from being part of that factor is by placing the belt buckle either onto one side or the other to kind of smooth out the front side. That does become inconvenient because we're so used to unbuckling our pants from the front. So you'll have to kind of finick around with it and see what works best for you. But I stick to something as simple as a Velcro belt that can just go through belt loops. Yeah, I don't really use clips because clips can snag and it doesn't really guarantee that I can access those clips properly. So Velcro is something easy that I'd stick to.
Plus, they're like almost infinitely adjustable within that range, right? So you can expand a little bit from a bigger lunch or not. So folks that have been following my channel a little bit, my Beltline series video, actually, Emily pretty much is on par with that. It's pretty much exactly what I said. We actually have not had this discussion before, so that goes to tell you that we independently came to our own conclusions, but we had the same result basically. So that means that, 2 is better than 1. So we beat you on that. So you have to listen to us when we tell you what to do, or at least that. So that, beyond like holsters and equipment and stuff, do you have any general firearms world advice for folks? Something that maybe something that you wish you had when you were coming up?
Be patient with yourself. You are always going to be your own worst critic. And when it comes to learning something new, if it becomes difficult, it's not because you're incapable of learning it. It's just because it's new material. You're not familiar with it yet. So you're going to go through your trials and errors with it. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. But because this is a perishable skill, you want to make sure that you are practicing all your skills properly. It's not just something that you're doing just to do. It's a methodical process. I think something that I've concluded through my experience is also asking why. Why am I doing it this way? That's the hugest question that you can ask any instructor. And if they can't answer it, it's not necessarily that they don't know. Maybe they just never had to explain it. But you yourself have to understand why you're doing things a certain way. What's the benefit behind it? And then going back to being patient with yourself, because I'm a very critical person. I know that I can do it. I just get really upset when I'm not able to do it as quickly as I want to. So part of it is also negative mindset. A lot of times we're very quick to belittle ourselves. I actually posted a video on that recently where I was practicing and I couldn't hit my target, even though I knew I could or should be able to. And so I start snowballing into a negative mindset, and I have to really snap out of it and realize hey, you can do it. There's no reason why you should belittle yourself. You just have to be a little bit more patient. And so if you work with yourself and constantly reinforce the positives rather than focusing on the negatives, you will get yourself out of that. You will be able to do it because you know you can. And so my biggest aspect, even now, even though I'm like preaching to everybody about this, I have to constantly practice patience. I constantly have to practice positive mindset. It sounds extremely cheesy, but that's what you have to do if you want to succeed. Because if other people know that you're very capable of doing something and you're the only person that's talking down on yourself, there's really no reason for you to do that. People are absolutely having faith in you. You know yourself well, if anything, better than anyone else. So if you know that you're capable of doing something and you're just not getting it done right away, it just means that it's going to take a little bit of time and effort. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. You're being your own crab in the barrel, if you will, right? The rest of you is trying to go up, and everyone's trying to help you up, but you're pulling yourself back down.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a spiral effect, helter skelter of misery, if you will. So if you start putting yourself down that way, then it starts to negatively affect your not only what you're doing, but what other people are doing, right? And that might cause people to alienate.
Be around that.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Well, that's excellent advice there. For folks who want to, I guess, get started in the training business also, or what have you learned that you can pass on to them, or maybe some type of career in the firearms world for those folks?
So if you have a passion for teaching, I say go for it. Just make sure that you are not only learning from vetted instructors that you know you can trust, but ask yourself what you want to teach and what materials are beneficial for you and your student, right? In regards to the legal aspects of everything, make sure that you have a license to teach. I guess the best way is to start, and I should say this as clearly as I can, regardless of the organization, if it's a well-recognized organization that you want to get your license or permit from, it's just a check mark box, right? You just get it just to get that license and permit, and to really further the understanding of how to teach someone. That's the biggest part. Just because I know how to do something, it doesn't necessarily mean I know how to teach and relay that information to an individual. And so that is another set of skills that you should also learn, is to how to teach someone. If you have the communicative skills down and you have your permit, great. Make sure that if you want to start your own company, like a DBA or an LLC or anything beyond that, make sure that you work with the city on that, right? Make sure that you are actually certified to be able to do that and run your business so that you can do it properly. Because the last thing you really need is any legal liability issues.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of those the hurdles that I guess a lot of folks who are starting or attempting to start their own businesses, they don't understand the legal ramifications that come with this. There's a lot of prep work, and there's a reason why not everybody can just start off and become an instructor. It's just there's a lot of back work, especially in our state, especially in California. There's a lot of insurance liability that you have to do with, a lot of paperwork, a lot of registration with the government in order for us to get permission to start a business, I guess, right? And
then to further that conversation, you touched on it actually, is insurance. Insurance as an instructor, insurance also as a gun owner, which are two separate things, by the way. Making sure that you cover your ass, like that's just down to the bottom of it. You got to make sure that you have insurance for yourself in case an incident does arise, whether it's because you were involved in an altercation or because an incident occurred downrange with your student. Leading into that, you also have to make sure you have a liability waiver. That's part of covering your ass. I literally spent hours and hours perfecting my liability waiver when I'm teaching, and I very clearly state to my student who has to sign it, make sure that you're reading everything, because you're literally signing your life away, right? And I say it that way specifically so that it kind of gives them a second chance to think about whether or not they want to commit to it, because I cannot foresee what's going to happen. I can do my very best to ensure that I not only make a positive experience for my student, but also a very safe environment. But that doesn't necessarily dictate that things will go the way I want them to. Right. So you always want to be prepared for the worst. And that also includes being medically prepared. It's not just medical gear, but also your set of skills to ensure that someone is going to stay alive at the end of the day, right? Because as we all know, first responders, it takes them time to arrive on scene. So if you have a student who accidentally shoots themselves from a negligent discharge, are you going to be able to respond to that properly to keep them alive until they get taken to the hospital? Right. So all those things, and it's a very serious thing. You really have to sit and think about. And if you're committed to it, great. Just make sure that you yourself can rely on your set of skills to provide everything that's necessary for your student.
Right. Or if anything else, find a partner in this industry. Because I mean, the firearms community is pretty small, and everyone's, for the most part, is willing to help each other out. Or at least partner with them for certain events. You just have to find people that you get along with and work well with. Try not to alienate yourself by, I don't know, just generally creating a type of a course content where you aren't working with other instructors in the community. So we all know each other for the most part. Like you and I, we met through the firearm circle itself, but we've never even met in person. This is purely, and we've had several great conversations actually. So that's just really how small this community is. Just so do your best to meet folks, meet people, be personable. There's nothing wrong with it.
I think the best way to go about meeting people is literally just going to classes. You're going for yourself, but the social aspect comes along with it. You're going to go and meet people who are either better than you, maybe not as good as you, or on the same level. And it's all awesome because you will learn from everybody that you meet. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, you're going to take something away. And so harvest that and remember to use that information to benefit yourself as well as an instructor and also as a shooter. Awesome.
Business sense with Emily Chen right there. All right. So I guess we're winding down towards the end of the interview, or at least the end of the questions now. Do you any sage general life advice you have for people outside of the firearm stuff, unless it just translates to life also?
I think that you should practice what you preach. For me, that's huge, right? Like I pride myself on being an honest and genuine person, a very blunt person. So if you ever want my opinion, you're going to have to let me know whether or not you need to sugarcoat it or not, because I'm not really looking for time. But being honest with someone, I think, is the greatest sense of respect, right? Me, myself as an instructor, first off, I will always admit to a student that I don't know everything. My methods are not always going to be the right way or the best way. I just know what I know, and I'm willing to relay that information. And so I will also admit that I don't know things. If something comes up and I'm not sure about it, I'm not going to just fake it and say, hey, you know what, just do this instead, or I think this is the answer. Be willing to say, I don't know the answer to this, but I think I know some people who do. And don't be afraid to direct those students towards another instructor, because it's not about your success. At the end of the day, that will come naturally. At the end of the day, what you should be concerned about is whether or not you are helping your students succeed in life, whether that's, downrange or off range. And so I have a ton of people who I actually direct to other instructors, because I know that they can take my students to the next level. And that's part of being in this community, is being able to share knowledge with one another. We're already learning from each other. Why not just continue forth by, pushing our students in that direction as well? Mm-hmm. So when it comes to practicing what I preach, if I don't know something, I'm not going to pretend like I know. I will always be honest and forthcoming about something. And I think that if people were not as egotistical, because we also see that in this community. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to be like the best and whatnot. And I think that's awesome, but it's not about your ego. It really comes down to just being a genuine person. Right.
Absolutely. It's like the general philosophy of raise other people to be better than you. Right. Yeah. Especially from I learned as a supervisor many years ago that I don't like doing work, so I like to raise my staff to be better than me, so I don't have to do the work. It's not that they are jeopardizing my position, and if they happen to get my position, then good for them. It means I did a good job. It's not like there's anywhere else I can't go, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're absolutely correct. It's that level of I guess mentorship is how I put it. Right. I try to tell folks that find somebody to mentor, because you do gain a lot of benefit from teaching somebody else, especially if you know that that person's going to take that knowledge and do something better with themselves. You know, there is that, I guess, how do we put this? Like our human nature to be social, or we have this collective that what we do for one person that helps the collective helps us too, I guess, right? And especially you and I coming from Asian cultures, that's generally how Asian cultures are, right? Very collective based.
Yeah, they're very much the one mind, one people thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I also didn't get to touch on is that when I talk about practice what you're preaching, it also comes down to yourself. My biggest flaw is that I'm not patient with myself, and I know that I've talked about that. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when I realize that my patience is running thin, I have to talk to myself as though I were talking to a student.
Like internally, or you externally speak this? Okay.
Sometimes out loud too.
Nice.
Because instinctively I start belittling myself, but then I have to stop and be like, look, all right, for instance, this is something that I've also experienced, not too many times, but just enough, where I have a difficult student for whatever mm-hmm. reason. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with me? Why can't I make this person understand what I'm trying to say? And it's not necessarily that I'm doing something wrong. It's just that I have to remember, like, not everybody is the same. So mm-hmm. you might have to find a different way to explain it to them. So being patient with myself and starting to exercise all the other tools that I might have in my toolbox is a way to overcome that. Like, what are my options? How do I clearly and simplify this information to better communicate with the individual, right? If that were the specific scenario. In general, with my patience running low about anything, whether it's driving somewhere or if I'm at the gym and I'm just not getting the results that I want, I have to just remind myself, like, hey, this is just one day, mm-hmm. right? Like, you have your good days and you have your bad days, but you ultimately decide how you're going to end your day. So right. You probably want to do it on a good note. And then I start realizing, like, okay, just be patient with yourself. And then I try not to, like, belittle myself after that, because I can do that too.
Yeah. You know, don't go to bed frustrated, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Let's see. I think we touched on this before offline in a separate conversation, but you also try to limit your student size, or at least your class size, down to X amount of students too, don't you?
Yeah, it really depends on whether or not I have, another person to help me with a group, which most of the time I don't, because I mostly teach private lessons. Here and there, I will have groups, but if I work with a group, I won't exceed beyond, I would say 6 is where I really, really max out. I'm very comfortable with teaching 4 people, but the more people that you're dealing with, the higher the chance there are of accidents or negligent discharges happening, because you can only be at one place at one time, right? If I'm standing back and I'm watching all 6 shooters, I still have to give each person the individual attention that's required mm-hmm. to ensure that they're acting safely. And so if I take on too many students at once, I'm not being able to pay attention to someone else that's completely out of my focus. Right. So minimizing the amount of students definitely helps with being able to focus on safety, which ultimately at the end of the day is our goal. So whatever you feel is necessary to maintain safety, do that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because safety is absolutely paramount in this industry, right? Because once that projectile leaves the barrel, you can't take it back. One of my prior guests actually said that too, but he's absolutely correct, and your mindset on that is absolutely correct also, because things happen. Sometimes they just happen, not necessarily out of somebody's intentions, but it just happens, and you have to be able to prepare for that.
Yeah.
Your I guess skill levels for your classes, do they range up and down from beginner to advanced?
Yeah, they do. They definitely do.
Okay. So you do teach more of the competition side as well, or is it just more practical firearms usage?
Shooting is shooting.
Okay.
I truly believe that all aspects of shooting is practical, regardless of how you want to set it up. Because from a defensive point of view to a competition point of view, everything is pretty much the same. It's just how you approach it.
Awesome. That's pretty much all the questions that we had for the general layout anyways. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Em? Anything that we missed?
No, I think everything was pretty spot on.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wanted to have this interview as more of a general conversation between you and I, like just trying to get to know each other a little bit better, because it's sort of the same way I imagine that our audience, they don't know who you are either, for at least the most part. So they're just trying to get to know you, and that's how I wanted to do it. And I certainly hope that your stories or your advice has resonated with the audience.
I think so too.
I think we'll go in and link your other interviews below. If you want to send that to me later, I'll link them down here, and so that people can learn a little bit more about your history and things that you've done with your life, if you will.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, awesome. So we'll send that. If you have any footage too you want to send to me, go for it. We'll take some action shots for your shooting. Like I said, folks, Em is she's pretty badass. Like, I've seen some of her video clips out there. She's like gliding across the range and shooting with absolute precision. So yeah, certainly better than I am. That's for sure.
It's all practice. You're very capable of doing it. We just got to do the hard work. That's all.
Right. Put in the work and put in the effort. So that's pretty much it, folks. That's all I got today. Of course, thank you, Emily. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you on. I look forward to your adventures out in Japan. Hopefully you'll get into, I guess, ballroom dancing again, eating and shooting, I guess, or airsoft. So, all right, folks, I'll link Emily's information here. Go and follow her channel, or follow her Instagram pages and any other social media pages that you might have. If you have those, send them to me. I'll link them here. Follow my channels if you haven't yet. And this is Inside the Industry, episode 4, I think it is. Yes, episode 4. And Emily, thank you again for being our first female guest here and showing the world what lady shooters can do. So that's all we got. Emily, you want to say goodbye to the group or to the folks?
Thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit subscribe.
All right, folks. I'm Jesse, Bunny Operator, signing out.